straight to Delta. Don't be a fool. Get your cooking gas. Fast. All petroleum needs. ULSD. Everyone in the region is shouting, Go Delta. Premium gasoline in a fully stocked C-store. So there's only one place you should be. Delta Petroleum, baby.
From the pitch to the palm of your hand, Betcage Sports brings to you iGaming, the ultimate dual gaming experience. Sports and iGaming in one powerful platform, live and legal. Tap your screen, place a bet, spin the reels, cash out fast. No delays, pure excitement. BetCageSports.com. Download the app and sign up today. Play responsibly. Must be 21 and over. Proud sponsor of Cricket West Indies, where a percentage of every dollar played with Cage goes to Windies for cricket and cricket development.
Back to school shouldn't meet you unprepared. St. Kitts Credit Union's Back to School Loan helps you borrow up to $10,000 with flexible repayment plans, fast approval, supportive terms, invest in your child's future with confidence. Because every child deserves a strong start. Start today at www.skccu.com or call 465-2272. SKCU, invested in their future with you.
Hey, Webmaster here. I stay connected to Freedom with the Freedom SKN app. Simply search for the Freedom app in the Android's Play Store or the Apple's App Store and download it. Enjoy world-class radio at its best, anytime, anywhere. Become a Freedom apper today.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to particularly our listeners in Nevis. I have some good friends in Nevis, and even those on their farm. They tell me they listen to me and they wait for the program. Guys, it is so beautiful to have you. Today, it is 1:43 p.m. and we are in St. Kitts, and I want to let you know that it's just magnificent weather. It is a typical Caribbean summer. I tell you that the sky is blue. It's just beautiful. Whatever clouds out there, they are fluffy and nice. But you know what? It is hot. It is hot, but the beautiful thing about the Caribbean is the moderation, the breeze coming from the Atlantic. And in St. Kitts, we have both breezes, the breeze coming from the Atlantic and the breeze coming from the Caribbean Sea. Oh, you are listening to Freedom FM 106.5, and we boast that this is world-class radio at its best. This is Issues with your host, Coach Adrian. And as usual, I always say it's great to have you on my show. Would you please allow me to reach out before we go into our topic? I think I had to say that. I must say that because I must show my gratitude. I want to thank the many listeners who meet me, many listeners who WhatsApp me, many listeners who email me, and the many who encourage me. And the many listeners, they may not call on the radio, but they help me, they give me information. And some actually do research for me. This is beautiful. I mean, this is so magnificent. It is really becoming a team program. That is great. The many who meet me and educate me on some issues, because I don't know everything. I'm just a development economist, and I have proficiency in banking and finance and whatever. But I am not a lawyer. I am not a great builder or construction man who's out there, the great procurement managers that I meet. So they educate me. I want to thank those people who let me know, Peter, I didn't call on your program, but I am listening and I schedule. In fact, one business owner spoke to me and he said, look, we look forward to your program, and we actually, my staff, they set aside to listen to your program. I am very, very grateful for that. And the many people who say to me, Peter, I learn much from your program. Now, I must tell you, I learn a lot from you, those who call. Thank you so much for the love. Now, last week, when we stopped, we established that inflation in St. Kitts and Nevis is induced by imported prices, government taxes, and business markups. I reported that the conventional wisdom in the local market, that is from the people that I spoke to, is that consumers in St. Kitts and Nevis should begin to feel the inflationary effect of the U.S. sweeping high taxes on imports entering the U.S. by Christmas time and into the new year, because the price changes are accumulating. From the custom clearance of the 6 bed covers, I worked out the arithmetic for you, and I showed that a household ought to be pointed. A single mother with children pays the same import taxes as a business owner. That's what it is. Not just in St. Kitts, but in most Caribbean countries. But I'm telling you, that's how it is in St. Kitts. So I proceeded to do a little more research when I left you, and to look at the whole impact of the government taxes on the cost of living in St. Kitts. And I proceeded to backtrack my research to the Labour Party coming into power in 1995, because I came here in 1991 and I have been there since. That is the time that the Labour Party came into power with Honorable Denzil Douglas. And I want to just hail him. In fact, I met him. Last week, Friday, and we are good friends. And we had quite a hug in the street. Whenever he meets me, he hugs me. And I love him as a statesman. And this is the time that they came into power. So allow me now to walk through time, and just to put the whole context of government taxes and the impact on the country in that set period. 1. St. Kitts and Nevis was officially recognized as, and I'm quoting this, St. Kitts and Nevis was officially recognized as a high-income country by the World Bank and the U.S. government in December 2012, end of quote. Number 2, on page 5 of the 2023 IMF report, I read, and I'm quoting, it says, St. Kitts and Nevis is a high-income economy. Its GDP per capita, about 18,000 US in 2021, is the highest of the ECCU countries, end of quote. So the IMF report confirmed the classification done by the bank and the US government that St. Kitts is a high-income country. And the yardstick that is used is GDP per capita. GDP per capita is simply an arithmetic where you take all the net value of all that the country produced, meaning the GDP, and then you divide it by the population. Now, of course, it's not an adequate measure, but outside of all the intricacies generally in the world, that is international institutions, and we use that as a yardstick for classifying countries. So you can speak of a low-income country, a middle-income country, and a high-income country. So on an average, what it is saying that in an arithmetic sense, the average citizen in St. Kitts owns or has asset that is valued 18,000 US, and that was the measurement in 2021. I suppose by now it might be more because, I mean, people have a lot of money, whatever. And the point that IMF here is making, it says that it is the highest in all the countries of the Eastern Caribbean currency area. Whenever we say ECCU, we mean Eastern Caribbean currency area. And we use that deliberately when we are talking about the central bank zone, or the central bank, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank zone or region. Sometimes we say OECS, Organization of Eastern Caribbean State, when we are talking about, if you want, the collective political body. So the point is, it is true that Dr. Douglas grew St. Kitts, or managed St. Kitts, or moved St. Kitts, or transit St. Kitts from a middle-income country to a high-income country between 1995 and 2012. So this is historical, and this is fact. Now, sometimes when I say that, people call and they say all kind of stuff. Oh, you love Douglas too much, and this and that, and whatever. Now, that has nothing to do with my friendship with Douglas. It has nothing to do with whether I love him or I don't love him. This is facts. It is like saying that Robert Bradshaw accumulated the lands so as to create a vision of empowerment for this country and turn the state into a capitalist state. Whether you like it or not, it's a historical fact. Now, what I want to do today is to connect this development with the tax policy and the, if you want, the cost of living that we spoke about last week in St. Kitts. So I'm using that as a basis. When I'm finished, I'm going to open the line and you can give me your own education. So Dr. Douglas had to navigate, like any other government in the Caribbean, and during that time, those were difficult times, had to navigate the period of high indebtedness to achieve that. To transit the country from a middle income. He had to do that. And I remember very well, you know, it's very difficult, or one can even say, you cannot develop a colonially impoverished mini-state like St. Kitts and Nevis without debt financing. You cannot do that, except you discover mineral, except you discover oil. You can't do that. Otherwise, development cannot take place without financing. Somebody got to finance it, just like you, individual. For example, if you're not working, somebody is paying for the food that you are eating. So in other words, in a monetized economy, just like in a household, in a state, you cannot develop without finding the finance for you to finance the development. And I remembered very well, and I deliberately mentioned that. I was at the central bank, senior advisor to the governor. I at that time moved from research into the to the governor's office. And I remembered Dr. Douglas fought bitterly with the IMF and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank concerning the debt overhang. At this time, I suppose, at one time I was part of it too. All what In fact, the chorus was, the debt is too high. Oh, Douglas, the debt is too high. You are increasing that national debt. You are mortgaging the next generation and whatever. But one thing I respect with this man, he may not have all these degrees like people who have degrees like a thermometer. He might not have all those economic and finance degrees, but he knows. He fought us at the central bank bitterly. But you know the great thing? At the end, he won. Douglas won. Why he won? He delivered. He transformed that economy from a middle income to, if you want, a near first world economy. He won. And later on, he was able to pay his debt. So why am I making that point? Leadership is a quality. Leadership, you don't buy this in a book. You don't read it in a book. You don't buy it in a store. So, in other words, if you are a leader, whether in your home or in your business or elsewhere, you got to stand for, in other words, you must have a vision. You must have a purpose. You must know where you are going. And you must stand for that. And to get there, except you set yourself a goal, you just mark in time. You just mark in time. You may be a leader. You may be a leader of business, a leader of government or whatever. But you just mark in time. So what? You collect your salary every end of month and you are in power. It don't make no sense. And that's why I respect Mr. Douglas. I respect Robert Bradshaw. I respect Eric William. I respect Fob Burnham, notwithstanding their weaknesses. I respect John Compton from St. Lucia. They have vision. And in other words, they put their team together and they orchestrate and they stay on purpose as to where they want to go. So, Douglas had a vision. Douglas had a purpose. And he rode the good and the bad. He rode the valleys and the mountains. At the end, he got what he wanted, irrespective of pressure from the IMF or from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And of course, from his detractors. In basketball, we don't say detractors. I shouldn't say that, In basketball, we say haters. I'm a Laker Nation supporter. And then the people who don't like Lakers, we call them haters. Now, this is just basketball. But the point that I want to make, having given Douglas his credential, the point is that you cannot achieve without a cause. Let's get that very clear. You cannot achieve without a cause, and we need to teach our children that. You cannot achieve without hard work. You cannot achieve without pain. You cannot achieve without sacrifice. So therefore, there was a cost that the people of St. Kitts would have to pay. If you had to transit, and therefore the cost of progress during the Dr. Douglas era, 1995 to 2015, was a generally high cost of living in St. Kitts, particularly for the lower income population. So I'm just balancing it. I'm showing you that you achieve, but there is a cost. And you saw the cost, of course, in the high debt overhang and whatever. Now we are talking about the cost that the people had to bear with respect to the fiscal policy or the tax policy. One, Dr. Douglas implemented the IMF and Central Bank recommended market-driven property tax method. I remember that. I was at the bank. Oh, everybody hot. And everybody said the Caribbean, the ECCU must do that. The countries in the Caribbean must do that. The countries that we have oversight of in the currency union must do that. They must introduce a property tax that is market-driven. Douglas bought it. And he implemented it, particularly for properties at Mattingly and properties from Bird Rock to the peninsula. I hope you remember that. You have to remember it because those who are there, that's what you are paying, the market-driven property tax. I know of a local property owner, a friend of mine at Frigate Bay, who was assessed for $10,000. $10,000 before he was paying a few hundred, $10,000. And I remember that he came to me and said, but Peter, what I'll do? I said, what you'll do? Well, they say they assess you, well, you have to pay, or if you don't want to pay, you have to contest it. Now, the good thing is that the IRD, the Inland Revenue Department, did allow for you to make objection to the board. And that so he said to me, I want to go to the board, but Peter, what will I do? I say, you open your mouth and you talk. He said, but I cannot talk. I cannot talk. I say, how you cannot talk? Just say what you want to say and whatever. So what he and his people did, they sought to team themselves together and to make an approach to the Inland Revenue Department on behalf of the entire community. Inland Revenue Department said they don't want that. I remember Bongsin William wasn't there. He was there. He said, they said they don't want that. You have to come individually. They have to come individually. It's because Inland Revenue is very smart. They're smart. In other words, if they allow you to come as a group, you can choose somebody who can talk and somebody who understands the arithmetic and the algorithm behind the whole stuff, and you can come and make your presentation. And then, of course, they'll have to make a decision for the entire community. They say, no, you have to come individually. I know what I'm talking about, because I did go before the board. I was assessed very high. Very high. I went before the board and I did my homework and I showed them that the algorithm that they were using to arrive at that tax rate is wrong. It's not applicable to St. Kitts and the vicinity. And Bongsin was there. Bongsin is a mathematician. And I remember Bongsin stood up. Bongsin said, yes, I have told you all this algorithm is not whatever, that. So therefore, they had to cut down what my initial assessment. But many of my friends, their assessment remained the same. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that the market-driven property tax method actually impacted severely on the price level. Now, later on, Dr. Douglas introduced the punitive, what I call the punitive, of course in the legislation they wouldn't say punitive, the punitive interest rate and penalty for late payments of taxes. And I'm going to quote what the initial regulation says. The penalty for late submission of the declaration is 5% of the tax amount and another 1% for each month of delay. Interest on overdue payment is charged at a rate of 12% per annum, starting from the date of filing the declaration. Of course, succeeding government, Harris in particular, I know, modified that and whatever. I don't know what the modification is there, but I know the penalties and the interest they still hold. So I am saying that these are part of the cost that was paid by the citizen for, of course, the transition or for the growth of the country. Point number 3. On the 1st of November 2010, Dr. Douglas introduced the value-added tax, the VAT, with a VAT rate set at 17%, the highest in the OECS countries. In St. Lucia, it is 12.5%. In Dominica, is 15%. In Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is 16%. But however, be careful. Hold your brakes very tight, because those countries I have mentioned there, in addition to the VAT, and the VAT is fairly high, 12.5, 15%, 16%, 50, that's not far from 17%, although a fraction of a dollar is significant. But mind you, all in addition to the VAT, all these countries have personal income tax, and you don't have that in St. Kitts. And not only do they have personal income tax, but in the Caribbean you have what I call a whole slew of nuisance taxes. They call by different names, and dues and fees and licenses and so on. So don't worry, the name, they are all taxes. They are taxes on income. So those countries, for example, St. Lucia, where I come from, is very tight on the people. It's tough. It's tough. The Jamaicans say tough. It's tough on my people in St. Lucia. They have income tax, the personal income tax. They have all the nuisance taxes. They have VAT. And not only that, they do not get the kind of tax break that succeeding governments here allow in St. Kitts. Antigua and St. Kitts and Nevis, however, they do not have personal income tax. Now, I did some research, and it shows that the highest standard VAT rate in the world is 27%. That is in Hungary, and 25% in Sweden. You might say, Peter, but Peter, that ain't nothing. I mean, over there we are only 17. Hungary is 27. Sweden is 25. I'll tell you quickly, hold your brakes. Because both of these countries, Hungary and Sweden, they have universal health care systems for all their citizens and residents. So you have to be careful. So that so that if you are going to take a lot out of production through taxes, you must be able to have mechanism in place that allows to cushion the effects. An institution called them safety nets. But however, both governments which followed Dr. Douglas, that is Dr. Harris's government and Dr. Drew's government, have by and large maintained the Douglas tax regime. They have not changed that. When they were out of power, when they were campaigning, they say all kind of things, what they would do and they would that. And I know them, I followed them because I go to all the meetings, all the political meetings. I go there, I take notes, I read all the manifestos and whatever. I read these things. And I speak to many of the politicians. I know them very well. I know them. They speak with me. Some of them, we have lunch together. I know that. By and large, they have maintained the Douglas tax regime. But, give them that, they do give tax breaks to cushion the inflationary effects of the tax somewhat. And Dr. Harris did that, and did that significantly during the virus and COVID-19 and in the post. You can't touch him on that. And the present government is very strong on safety nets and the transfers. My point is that in as much as our inflation, I said all of that to say, in as much as our inflations are imported, and that is correct. So in the Caribbean, we take the high price. But Caribbean governments are as much to be blamed for the current high cost of living in these countries. In fact, that is one reason why it is so expensive to travel in the region. You try to travel in the region. I went to Guyana last CPL because I wanted to make sure that I accompanied the St. Lucian Kings. And I told my friends in Guyana I have come to Guyana to take back that cup because we have to take it back to St. Lucia. Because Julian Alfred had already said, this is our year. And I told them that they laugh at me and whatever. They laugh at me and whatever, but they took care of me, they feted me. They were very nice to me. But I did return with the cup. But the point that I am making is, It cost me just to go to the CPL to cover the business end of the CPL more than $10,000. And a large part of that was traveling on Inter-Caribbean. We destroy Liat. And what is happening now, the taxes on Caribbean airline tickets, they range from 40% to 50%. That is government-imposed taxes, and of course, the range or the retinues of fees that you pay at the airport. In fact, I hope you know that, because those who watch CPL would realize that the People National Party of Jamaica, they had an advertisement on while the CPL was going. Why? Because Wednesday is the election. And why am I talking about that? Because one of the main issues for the election in Jamaica, and the pollster Donald, I think it's Donald, that's his name, the one who did the poll for the one in St. Kitts, and the recent poll that was done in St. Kitts. He predicted that the PNP is going to win the next election, and there was an advertisement on the CPL game last night. And I'm saying that to say, one of the main issues in that Jamaican election for Wednesday is tax reduction. So you see, I'm not playing no politics, I'm playing economics. One of the biggest contributor of inflation and high cost of living in the Caribbean are governments, Caribbean governments and government-imposed taxes. Now I'm going to take some advertisement. When I come back, I'm going to open the phone lines and to let you have your say. And then I have some more information that I'm going to share with you. We're going to take some advertisement now, and then when we come back, we're going to open the phone line.
Hey, Webmaster here. I stay connected to Freedom with the Freedom SKN app. Simply search for the Freedom app in the Android's Play Store or the Apple's App Store and download it. Enjoy world-class radio at its best, anytime, anywhere. Become a Freedom apper today.
Reliable, dependable, Delta. If you live here in St. Kitts and your tank on E, there's only one place that you should be. Maybe driving in Nevis and you need some fuel. Go straight to Delta. Don't be a fool. Get your cooking gas fast. All petroleum needs ULSD. Everyone in the region is shouting, Go Delta. Premium gasoline in a fully stocked C-store. So there's only one place it should be. Delta Petroleum, baby.
From the pitch to the palm of your hand, Betgage Sports brings to you iGaming, the ultimate dual gaming experience. Sports and iGaming in one powerful platform, live and legal. Tap your screen, place a bet, spin the reels, cash out fast. No delays, pure excitement. BetCageSports.com. Download the app and sign up today. Play responsibly. Must be 21 and over. Proud sponsor of Cricket West Indies, where a percentage of every dollar played with Cage goes to Windies for cricket and cricket development.
Back to school shouldn't meet you unprepared. St. Kitts Credit Union's Back to School loan helps you borrow up to $10,000 with flexible repayment plans, fast approval, supportive terms. Invest in your child's future with confidence, because every child deserves a strong start. Start today at www.skccu.com or call 465-2272. SKCU, invested in their future with you.
Webmaster here. I stay connected to Freedom with the Freedom SKN app. Simply search for the Freedom app in the Android's Play Store or the Apple's App Store and download it. Enjoy world-class radio at its best, anytime, anywhere. Become a Freedom apper today.
Welcome back. You are listening to Freedom FM 106.5. We are broadcasting from Sugar City in St. Kitts. We are world-class radio at its best, and we are happy for that. We take pride in that. This is Issues with Coach Adrian. We are talking about the impact of government taxes, particularly in St. Kitts, but we are also skirting into the Caribbean on high cost of living, on inflation. We want to hear from you. We want you to tell us how you feel, what you think, what is your experience. We want you to share your experience. We want you to share what impacts you, what's your issue. We want you to ask your questions. We want to get your opinion. The number to call is 662-1065, 465-6474, 465-0546. Let me just repeat. 662-1065, 465-6474, or 465-0546. We are discussing the impact of government, or if you want, the cost that the people in St. Kitts had to bear, of course. Somebody is on air. If you're on air, we take you. That's what we said. That's our policy. You're on air, please.
Good day, Peter.
Good day.
Yeah. That was interesting foray into, our economics since almost since independence. But I'd like to point out something, right? One of the mistakes we've made in the Caribbean, not just in St. Kitts, I think, but in St. Kitts for sure, is that we tend to base our economies, our fiscal policies on windfalls. So, for instance, during the sugar years, you know how the prices used to ebb and flow, and sometimes we'd have some really good prices, and everything's fine and dandy, okay? And when we have those years, we don't put away something for the rainy day. Same thing we did with the CBI, okay? We acted as if, it's going to be there forever, and, went on a spending spree of sorts. Even now, we are essentially, you mentioned the fact that they're concentrating on safety net. Those are not foundational things to build an economy on, I don't think. Okay? And so what I'm saying is, you mentioned taxes, for instance, and you're blaming the government for the high taxes and so on. But you should ask yourself, why do they have these high taxes? And one of the reasons is that they have huge government spending. In St. Kitts, I think, according to the World Bank, they have upward of 30-something percent of the workforce employed by government. One would argue that is unsustainable, but no one seems to be doing anything about it. And also, you don't get the impression that even right now, as the CBI revenues are declining, that government is really making an effort to reduce spending. You see the usual things being done, the traveling, the raising of salaries, no belt tightening by anybody. And at some point, I think it's going to come back to bite us. So, okay, let's deal, I am thinking, first with that high tax thing. Try to get down the taxes, but I suppose it's hard to do that when you employ so much. And it is political, especially coming close to an election. it is not considered good politics to start retrenching workers. Ideally, what should happen is that investment and so on, both foreign and local, should be promoting growth in the economy to absorb these people. But that is not happening. I don't see the government concentrating on that. Okay? And so I think we're in a kind of a quandary, how to get out of it. I still feel that the focus economically should be on attracting investment. And by the way, when you say attracting investment, you got to be careful with that because, as you know, from recent times, people are questioning the types of investment. You don't just go recklessly and desperately try, just wash your foot and come and we take you, right? We still have to be discerning. We still have to be careful in what we do because whatever we do now is going to have implications for the future. So I'd like you, as you talk about taxes, okay? And yes, we want to reduce them, but how do we reduce them in a way that allows for a suitable transition? Because as you well know in your discourse, when we transitioned from, let's say, sugar to tourism and so on, it was a pretty smooth transition. There wasn't really a huge blowback, right? So we successfully managed that around then. But now, how do we manage this new transition? Okay? Because I think that is what's going to be important going forward. Okay, then.
I have taken the notes and I'm going to respond to them. Is there somebody online?
Sure.
We're going to take all the people online, but I'm taking all your notes. I'll respond to that. You online, please? You on air?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Very nice.
Yeah, I just happened to be in a position to listen today. So, I would like you to clear up some things for me. You said something about Mr. Denzel Douglas and in a meeting with the IMF, and he fought, right? And in the end, he won. Well, question number one, I would like to know, what did he win? Because I don't think it was made clear to us what it exactly he won. Next, in 2012, you said that, I think you said that Mr. Douglas moved this country from middle income to high income. I'm wondering if this isn't a label that was given by the IMF. Because I am wondering, like in the context of you said that he won, I'm wondering now if the IMF felt slighted, and so when they went back, they're the ones who decided, okay, this is an affront to us, and so we are going to remove whatever privileges.
Very nice. Take your time.
We are going to remove whatever privileges Mr. Denzel Douglas has to access what they call them, grants, etc., etc. So we are now going to make it difficult for him, or the country, and we are going to say that they have now graduated from middle income to high income. So when they now come begging, they will have to borrow loans that they will have to repay interest on. So in other words, they are removed from their sort of, quote unquote, good graces. Next, you talk about the, on the backdrop of the high income country label. And I think you talk about the calculations that is used in determining what makes us a high income country. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you mentioned something about the GDP or whatever financial figures or figures representing whatever monies whatever category of money is that's spent. And that has to be divided, I assume, by the total number of persons in the population. Now, we have to admit that maybe at the time, we have maybe a few persons who had maybe huge bank accounts. And maybe we have the majority of people who have very little. Now, those who have a lot of money and those who have little money, that's going to go into the basket of the calculation. So, divided by the total number of the persons in the population. Now, you know that figure or that result in the end is going to be sort of skewed. And I guess, in my estimation, that's where you have a total of, as you say, the U.S. value, I think, of property mounting to $18,000 per person. Now, I believe that is as a result of the outliers. Because I am looking at this now, a country that is labeled high income, but at the same time, there are persons now who are saying that we have a large percentage of persons in the country who are basically indigent or they are living below the poverty line, right? So I want to know how we can reconcile those two. Now, back up to the IMF and this high income country label. Shortly after that, we hear about the homegrown, what they call it, their homegrown austerity measures. And there is where now the country or the citizens in the country have been slapped with all of these taxes. Now, you know that is going to overall affect, negatively impact this projection of us being a high income country. And I think, finally, how do we stand in light of us being a high level, a high income country in the light of what is happening in the United States? And I speak as of now, because I think that previously some of our families were benefiting from remittances that come from overseas, especially the U.S., even in other parts of Europe, especially like Great Britain. We now hear of all of these clampdowns that they are doing, and persons cannot send out money as they like. I assume remittances were part of the calculations, form part of maybe of the GDP calculations that I guess they use to say we are a high income country. So how does all of this fit in now, right now? And as we stand in the lights of the taxes, I mean, inflation, decreases in remittances, what do you say? And persons attesting to the fact that there are more people who are in dire need of financial assistance. What do you say now? Can you still say that this country can be accurately labeled high income? I'll continue to listen.
I have taken all the notes. I am taking the notes. In fact, when the time comes for me to respond, I'm going to deal with your issues first, and then Mr. Economist who called me is second. If there is no one on the line, okay, we can deal with that. Very nice. Now, I am very, very appreciative of the two callers. I think the Economist, as usual, I mean, he gave us a whole set of issues. I have written it. I'm going to respond to them step by step. But I think I want to respond to the second one first. I think I want to thank you for the detail. I want to thank you for the analysis. I want to thank you for the issues that you raised, the economic variable that you place in the equation. Now, let's talk about it. And as I said last week, it doesn't matter if we don't finish the program. I don't care. Wherever I stop, in the following week, I continue. The key thing is it's an educational program. We're going to discuss it as is. This is what is before me now. Mr. Douglas, did he win? A mini state like St. Kitts and the Caribbean, a number of them are small states, but some are larger than others. And of course, some are more endowed. Trinidad, Jamaica, they are endowed. They are endowed, not just, all of them are endowed with human resources, we know that. But they are endowed with natural resources and whatever. And sometimes history have blessed some of them better than others. And the bulk of us were just Muscovado economies, and then transit from Muscovado economies to tourist economies, like you said. When we inherited or we became independent, and I did research on that while I was at the university. When we became independent with a fiscal budget that was in deficit. In other words, the fellas sent us out when they didn't want us, the British, and they say, go and be independent. But you beginning independent with a slate where it's already a deficit. But the good thing that was with you, look, they gave you some grant, so when you are preparing your budget, you have some kind of a buffer. You know, if X is coming, you can make allowance for that. You cannot develop a country of that size, like most of the Eastern Caribbean, and countries that are so endowed, without massive debt financing, except somebody from outside is going to come in and finance your deficit, finance your investment. Now, Douglas realized that he had to transform this country. But to transform this country, having closed the sugar industry, and I remember that. I remember when the sugar industry closed. I was on the committee for the closure of the sugar industry. Now, he knew, therefore, that nobody is going to come out there and give you money. If you want to achieve, you're going to have to take debt. And he sought to borrow from outside and domestically. And I am telling you at the time that the IMF and the central bank, because I was there, I came to the central bank in 1991. Douglas came in power in 1995. And we loaded pressure on him. Look, he said, I am not stopping the pathway of development. We need that, and it must be paid for. How do I say that he won? Not only did he, at the end, having moved the country, not only did he pay out his debt, but he transformed the economy. And when we say we transformed the economy economies are not classified by what people say, you know. In other words, America or England or CARICOM or CDB or IMF, they'll just come and say your country is a low income, a middle income, and a high income. That's not how it goes, you know. No, you know. It is just like a person. You can take a person, two persons on the street. And because we are in a market economy or in a market society, everything is based on price, on dollar value. So in a market economy, or in an economic sense, we say it like that. The person who has asset, all your asset, that is worth, say, $100,000, and the person who has asset that is worth $10,000, the person who has $100,000 in a sense is in a different class, meaning that this person is more financially endowed. That is how countries are classified. In other words, the net value of all that they have and all the asset and all the wealth. Some countries have their wealth both in the country and also invested overseas. So the collective of that, in other words, just like if somebody, like when I teach business, I teach what I call net worth. And I say what you really want to have is net worth. And what is the net worth? The net worth is all what that you have that no bank or no financier has a call upon. So some people have a lot of things. They have land, they have house, they have this, they have that, but they can't buy a lunch. They can't buy dinner because the very car that they have and everything that they have belong to some financier. So in a sense, you have properties, but the property is not yours. It's not yours because you don't have net worth. So what you try to do as you grow, just like as you transform yourself, and just like when you transform a country, you want to gradually make sure some of your asset or all of your asset are debt-free because you have net worth. It gives you room. So at the end, Douglas fought us. He fought IMF. At the end, he didn't only clear his debt, but he was able to get the net value of all that is produced and whatever in the economy, which we classify as GDP, not only to continue going, the value of that, but it went up to values of countries that are so-called developed countries. That's what we're talking about. Now, how in economics we do that? We look, of course, as we said, your GDP. Now, there is not any panacea in classifying countries. That is why we are very careful in development economics. They taught that. You must be very careful how you classify one country or another. That is why you notice when I speak about St. Kitts, I hardly speak about St. Lucia, St. Vincent. I don't compare to St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Grenada. I don't. Because they are in two different stages of development. Because you are talking about middle-income countries, lower middle-income countries. Well, and how do we arrive at that? In economics, the formula is you take all what that the country, the net value of all that, I said the GDP, and you take the country's absolute population. Of course, we know what is going to happen. And you divide that by the absolute population. And one can quickly argue, if your population is small, so you're going to be big. Yeah, but also you're talking about the denominator. If it's small, you say you're going to be big. But what about the numerator? The numerator also says the very same thing too. If your GDP is large, it means it's going to show up too. So in other words, there are two movements taking place. A movement in the denominator and a movement in the numerator. So we use that to classify countries. And from 2012, the St. Kitts per capita income, or per capita GDP, have been in that value, in that amount sustainably. And all that was done under the period of Denzel Douglas. Now, I am not saying, and I'm not saying Douglas is this and that, because that's immaterial. We're talking about the fact. So he achieved two things. He was able to get debt financing to finance his development program. He achieved the development goal that he wants. He put the country on a takeoff platform, and you can't take that away from him. He put it on a takeoff platform, but at the same time, he did that at a cost to the nation. That's the point I'm making here. And the cost is high cost of living. Now, the caller mentioned about IMF. IMF does not impute classification of low income, high income, and middle income and countries. They can't do that. It's as an international formula that is used. That's bigger than IMF. It's bigger than the World Bank. And therefore, IMF couldn't do that because IMF at that time, IMF and Douglas were not seen eye to eye at all, so that they couldn't do that. And so the point is that the guy had a vision. He implemented the vision. And of course, There were times of pain. There are times that the debt overhang was very high. It was very high. I remember that. And it was very a source of agitation in this country. I was right here. But he rode all of that. And at the end, he was able to pay his debt. Secondly, he was able to, so that the caller made a point. The per capita GDP does not speak to equity or inegalitarian. No, it does not speak to that. I agree with you, because it's an absolute number. You are actually saying that when you divide the answer that you get, you are saying that it is suggesting that the typical person or the average Kititian has $18,000 US in asset or whatever. That's what we are saying. Now, when in arithmetic, when we use average, and all of us know that, when we use average, we are not saying that at every point in the continuum that the value would be the same. For example, let's take cricket. A fella can get five ducks. He can get 5 ducks, or he can get 4 ducks. And then next one, he goes back and he bang 100. And that changes the average, because then that is let's say 4 ducks. That is 4 ducks plus 100. That is 100. Divide by 5. He averages 20. So the average is what we call in arithmetic. An average is a smoothing. It's a smoothing. And the second point, that in a market economy, there will always be inequity. Once we accept a market economy, we are saying that you will have the haves and the have-nots. That's what you accept. That's what you accept. If you don't want to accept a market economy, then it means, therefore, you must accept a system that does not determine, if you want, lifestyle on the nature of dollar value. So, for example, welfare state experiment like Cuba. It's a welfare state. It's a command state. It's a state where the emphasis is not the individual, or the individual ownership, or the individual possession, or what the individual... In the market economy, we say you have to try to be what you can be. And in the process of trying to be what you can be, it doesn't matter what you do to the other man. You can ride on the head of 20 men, but you try to be what you can do. In the other economy, the emphasis is on the collective, on the whole, on the community, not on the individual. The ownership, in other words, we're talking about shared resources, command resources. And I suspect that even if Bradshaw was alive, when he took control of those lands and nationalized it and turned the state into a capitalist state, I have a strong feeling that the state lands would not be distributed on party lines as they are being done now. So I have tried to answer your question, my second caller, and to say that it is not a game. The movement from middle income to high income under the Douglas administration is not a game between Douglas and the IMF. That is not correct. But I have tried to explain how that is achieved. And the point that you made about the inequity, the point that you make about the number of people who fall through the cracks, yes, if you accept a market economy, therefore, you are saying that there are things that your government cannot do. That's what, because it's market economy. Government can legislate a minimum wage and this and that, but there is so far that they can go. Because even if, for example, let me just give a simple thing. If the government were to set the minimum wage at a level that the market cannot absorb, it can even cause more harm to the country and to the people itself, because all the businesses, the business sector will do, because it's a market economy, say, well, we can't take you all, we have 20 of you all working here, we have 200 working here, but we cannot hold all of you all, we're going to have to lay off some of them, and no government can prevent them from laying them off. It's a market economy. Or they can simply say, we're not taking new staff, we're not employing new, And I'm going to discuss that issue later on, because that is beginning to happen here in St. Kitts. I'm going to discuss that. And therefore, your excess labor can stay on your hand. The number of people who are actively looking for work can stay on your hand, and because you can't force them. You can't force the government to take them. You cannot do that. All right. I have tried to deal with the first caller. The second caller. The first caller, I think you raised some magnificent point about that. You said that in the Caribbean there is too much attitude of windfall. And I like that. That when the going is good, you don't save. You don't save for rainy days. When you were growing up, that is what our parents said, and the parents never went to university. They never go to college, but they had more, if you want, non-formal education than us. And therefore, when there is somebody's online, okay, I'll take the person online, and I'll go back to that. You on air, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm hearing you stating some data. Does the data just...
I'm not hearing you very clearly, though. Where are you? Are you speaking from on the outside or inside, or is there noise around you?
Inside.
There is no noise around you. And take your time. Speak slowly, because you are the guy from Montserrat.
No noise. No, I want to ask you a question.
Go on.
You're stating, does your data that you're quoting, right, does it just apply to St. Kitts or to St. Kitts and Nevis? I'm hearing you say St. Kitts. I will petition St. Kitts all the time. Does it apply to both St. Kitts and Nevis or just St. Kitts?
Yes, I'm very sorry for that. It is both St. Kitts and Nevis, yes. Sometimes I get carried away and I keep on saying St. Kitts. And not only that, it even happened in cricket. We, for example, when the CPL is going here in St. Kitts, as if St. Kitts is the country, but the country is St. Kitts and Nevis. I agree with what you said there, and I will seek to correct that, sir. Thank you. All right, so it is the information that I am giving is really about St. Kitts and Nevis, but I suppose this is a weakness that stays with all of us. We tend to emphasize St. Kitts. Okay, you on air, please. You on air. Okay, fine. So the point that we were making about the previous caller, he talked about the windfall. Government does not save enough now. In fact, I'm going to delete that next week, because I'm going to show you that government savings is going down drastically. And then I'm going to, but I have some databases on that. I'm going to share that with you. So he's saying that, but I am not, yes, there are times that government have done well. For example, I have data on that when CBI was high up and whatever. But you see, I will also show you next week that that is not exactly so. Even if CBI is high up, but it's government revenue we're talking about, government revenue. In other words, the pool that is coming in. And I think where the individual, where the caller made a very good point is there is really two blades of the scissors, is two matching. I mean, so even one line item, CBI is a line item. So even that line item is performing well in the fiscal. And when we say fiscal, we mean government revenue and expenditure. So how government manage the flow of flows coming in, revenue, and flows going out, expenditure. And he made the point, that is the expenditure. So, because while you manage one side of the blade, if you don't manage the other side of the blade, then you get, of course, you get the imbalance. And I'm going to deal with that in more detail next week. I have a few tables that I want to share on that while we're on this tax issue, And okay, you on air, please. If you on air, we take you and I go back to my discussion. Yeah, you on air.
Hey, John, good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
And good afternoon to all your listeners. Hey, John, you make some good point there. Like one, you like give the average like on cricketer. We love that. One, you say sometime you have to ride hard on people's head, forget where you go. And we can say that even like China even do that. They got billions of dollars to lend out to people back, but you still got plenty hungry people in the country. I live Mandala there. You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on.
Right. So, I will come back now to our little island. It is, and remember me tell you, couple weeks that sometimes then data then don't even reflect the ground. But then now you explain them a little bit better now that people can understand. And I will need to hold our government, the leaders and them to account. Because you see why I explain that, they don't explain all something there to the citizens, right?
I cannot hear you very well sometimes.
You not hear me very well?
I hear you well now. Yes, sometimes maybe you keep it closer to your mouth or something like that. Yes. Yeah,
there's sometimes you have to blame the leaders them, because like how you they explain, that they don't explain that to their citizens. So that's why the citizens so much a question, because they must say one thing and then you know not see exactly what I say. You get that?
Mm-hmm.
So right. So then the analysis you can make with the individual with that properties. But the properties are then tie up in the bank, so not really actually his or her own.
Correct.
Right. But at the same time, it seems like you live high, but not for the commodity. It is still a farm. You get that? So, right? If the leaders of the country be a little bit more honest, and me know that they want to go back to power. Me know that. So they make things look nice and gloomy and so forth, and so like them are just do so well and so forth, that they need to get re-elected. But at the same time, they need to be honest to the citizens and explain properly to the citizens like how should they do, and everything things are run a little bit more smoother. Okay, I don't mind a little bit.
Right, I'm going to respond to you and then go back to my first caller. Now, I agree with you that you say the leaders tend to use the database, they use the data set to sell themselves for their own advantage. Now, that may be so, and we have to, like I said last week, we have to be careful with information, with data, because you can twist even the raw data when you are analyzing it to make it say what you want it to say. So you have to be careful. So you must find out for yourself. And the thing is, we are living in a world that where information is all around you. So telling me that the man says something this and that because look, PAM said that and Unity said that and Labour said that and this, that is the very same incidents, but all of them say differently. Find it out for yourself. You need to know for yourself because information is available. Now, so therefore, and we live in small countries, like this man have been saying over my caller from Montserrat. We live in small countries. For example, before I come here every Monday, during the week I drive around. I speak to people, I look at projects, I look at what people are doing. Because all this database that I have, they need flesh. I have to put flesh on them. They have to make sense. Because the data has to show what is happening on the ground. So I look around, I look at housing stats, but it started, but it's a whole 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, nothing ain't happening. I drive around, I look at Ramadan, and Ramadan supposed to have been this big thing and so on. I go in there, I talk to them, I pretend that I am a tourist, I want to go in to get information from them and this and that, and I pass over and I drive by this beautiful structure I like there before I get to Ross University. When I saw they were building it, I got so excited and I say, oh, that is great. But what is happening in it today? The Colombians or the Guatemalans or the Ecuadorians or whoever they are having a show inside there. It's a show. So basically, projects are conceived or projects are begun, and you expect that those projects are going to develop, if you want, unleash some kind of effect on the country by creating jobs and by creating trains of activities, both at the front when it begins and when it begins to operate, employing people and creating vendors there and so on. But that is not happening. It's not happening. I drive around, I see a number of beautiful buildings that were once beautiful. They're growing trees, and I take pictures of them. They're growing trees, and it has been so. They have been growing trees since the departure of Douglas in 2015. Now, that's not just a statement. That has nothing to do with preference. It has nothing to do with who I like or who I don't like. It's a fact. It's a fact. That's a reality. Something about the attractiveness of this country. The country has not been able to attract foreign investment of the sort that is going to create those kind of multiplier impact, snowball impact on the rest of the country. All right, so I'm going to go back to just one more thing that my caller said, and then I'm going to move on because our time is going very, very fast. And he spoke about the high taxes. And I agree with him. In small states, in many states like us, if you don't unleash, if you don't stimulate job-creating activities. You have to have, the government must have vision. You cannot just go to work and come back every day and go back every week and every month. That's not government. You are a mighty manager of the country. It's just like you're a general manager. You have to come with ideas like TDC to make TDC prosperous, to make RAMS prosperous. You're going to have to do it. But just that your business is the whole country. You got to do it. You have to get ideas. And that is why government is so well endowed than any other business. It's a special, beautifully endowed business. When you come into power, you are very fortunate. You're extremely fortunate because you come to power if you want, a business or a workforce that has all kind of skill sets. Make them work. They have to work for the money. They must come up with ideas. They must conjure ideas so that you can create activity. You can stimulate activity. You can encourage entrepreneurship. You can nurture the spirit of enterprise. That's what this thing is all about. And that's what this thing is all about. Because the caller made a point. You are not going to achieve that, he said, through transfer. You can give all your subsidies. You can give all your subsidies. You can do well. You can give them money every month. You can give money every 3 months and whatever. It's not going to do, Because what you're creating is a dependent society. They're going to come back to you. You must do that. That is important. It is very, very important. The welfare state is important. But that must go side by side with the stimulation of that economy. You must get production, distribution going in train. That is very, very, very important. Now, let me just move on. We have just about 9 minutes left, and we're not going to finish our issues now, and we will continue. Just to tell you that you are listening to Freedom FM 106.5. We are broadcasting in St. Kitts. The country, as the caller told me, the country is St. Kitts and Nevis, but we are broadcasting from the island of St. Kitts, which is the main island. We are broadcasting from the capital of the country, that is Basseterre. You are listening to Issues, and your host is Coach Adrian, Peter Adrian. And we are discussing the impact of government taxes or government tax regime, government tax policy on the rest of the economy and the society and how it contributes. We have a caller. If we have a call, we take you and whatever. You are on air, please.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
Thanks for taking my call. I don't want to spend as much time as some of your previous thesis presenters did, because I don't want to criticize your program, because it's an excellent program. But when they present their particular thesis, it leaves in a position to have to dissect it, while those of us who want to make some quick points can't get in. So hear me now. We are 40 plus years into independence. We have had 3 prime ministers who knew very little. In fact, they came in with a little background in economics. And the changeover happened during the second period of the period of the second Prime Minister, Dr. Douglas. But you stress a lot on the second part of his term, 2010, when a lot of mistakes were made in that first period. In fact, you credit him with changing the economy when he closed down the sugar industry. But if you remember, prior to closing down the sugar industry, he publicly declared he was not going to do that, when he knew much better than that. So I don't know, and then you claim that he had the vision. Well, maybe he had the vision, but did he project that vision to the people? Because as you yourself acknowledge, that he paid a price. But at the end of it, you still believe that what he did was justified. Coming to the third Prime Minister who we had as well, wasn't it the same of reckless spending? Because we don't hear a lot about the kind of money that was made, whether during the time of sugar, or even more during the CBI bonanzas. We don't hear how much that was spent or misspent. But we want to give these guys who knew very little about economics, and yes, I'm not saying they didn't get good advice or bad advice, but I think you're giving them more credit than the ordinary man would like to give him. So from your perspective, you gave an example that you were able to go in, for example, and defend the level of taxation and have it adjusted. How many people were able to do something like that and benefit from a situation being able to go in and face anybody like the people in Inland Revenue? I'm saying our politicians have not done a good job as you want to give them credit for. How do you respond to stuff like that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. I respect that. And there are 2 points. I'm going to respond to your point, and thank you very much. But the first point that you make, and I'm about what? About what? It's about 9 months, 10 months in doing this thing. The first time I did sports for 2 years with ZIZ. I do not want to cut my callers. I don't want to cut them, and some of them do give long things and whatever. And I know because I can see that the phone lines are buzzing. So I could ask you, please, when you are calling, maybe if you have 4 points, give us 2. Give us 2 points, and then so that when I'm answering them. And you also would give the other people a chance, and you can call back. You can do that. Okay, thanks very much. Now let me respond to the caller, and we just have 4 minutes to go. I value that call. I am very careful to say, and if you notice that the pros and the cons, the advantage and disadvantage. Now, we know, and you made a very good point, when you look for a job at TDC or at Horsford or at Rams, they ask for the credential for the particular area that you want. If it's banking, you got to have some business, some degree in banking. If it's accounting, a degree in accounting. If it's economics, or if it is land surveyor, you must do that. Or if it's law, you must go to law school and whatever. Now, as you rightly say, there is no credential for being a politician. In fact, the only credential that I always tell my wife, the only credential that we have in the Caribbean for being a politician is you must be able to win a seat. Because what we have is constituency politics. Constituency politics and first past the post. So which means, therefore, if Joseph can win that seat in Central, he doesn't have to have no GCE. He doesn't have to go to no school. He doesn't have to have no speciality. In other words, it is his sex appeal. It is his reputation in the community. Now, maybe we are in a very unique place here in St. Kitts. When somebody has a degree, we argue at the university. I taught at the university for some time. When the person have a degree, whether the degree is in literature, in land surveying or whatever, a degree means that you have reached a certain level of cognitive level. So even if your area is in medicine, even if your area is in health, even if your area is in law, it does not mean that you are a pro in economics, I agree with that, or pro in finance, but it means you have a certain grasp of, if you want, doing things, in methodology, in the way you approach things and whatever. And one of the things that you have that is sure, you know, and I have always said that on the radio, you should know what you don't know and where to find it. That's what they taught me in graduate school. You must know what you don't know and where to find it. And I know that. I know what I can't know. I wouldn't come and speak to you about law. If I want to speak about law, I get my wife to speak, not me. I am trained in economics, development economics. I'm not even trained in quantitative economics. I'm not trained in petroleum economics. I'm not trained in economics of transport. I am trained in overall development economics. And then I went to IMS school where I am trained in macroeconomic analysis. And because I had done political economy, I understand the interplay of public policy and how they infect society and the economy. And then the central bank gave me a very good opportunity for 20 years that I learned banking and finance. So the point that you make is correct. The IRD would not allow the community to form a group and come to them and make one presentation because they know that I was going to make the presentation on behalf of the people at Frigate Bay because we had already agreed on that. They say no. They say they want individual. So I made my presentation, and they had to take the presentation because I was correct. But many of those could not come. Others who tried to come did not make it, and they are paying the high price. I am also paying a high price, but not as high as them. Now, guys, I want to thank you. We have a lot more to speak next week. I am going to take it from where we stopped. And I want to thank you for your contribution. I want to thank you for listening. And I think I want to thank all the people who call. And those who did not have time to call in, I ask those who call for a long time, please cut down the issue to fewer so that they can come in. You have been listening to Freedom FM 106.5. We broadcast out of Sugar City, St. Kitts. And you have been listening to Issues with Coach Adrian. See you next week, same time, same place, when we shall continue. We will continue talking about the impact of government fiscal on the cost of living. And if we are finished, we'll introduce our new series. Until then, bye-bye.
World-class radio at its finest. 106.